morning, everybody. It's another week here in beautiful Happy Valley. It's Monday. We're at Pine Grove Hall. This is Connect Happy Valley A.M. here Monday through Friday, 9 to 10 a.m. I'm Chris Buchignani. He's Greg Woodman. We are continuing, Greg, our successful string of guests. Joining us today is Dr. Ted Alter, a guru of community and economic development. I knew he'd chuckle when I used that term. But Ted, your resume is so long and impressive, I won't even attempt to rattle it off the top of my head. I think no one is better qualified to introduce yourself to the audience than the man himself. So go for it, Ted. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much, Chris. We wouldn't want to do that. It'd be terribly boring, going through all that stuff. I'm really pleased to be with you guys this morning.
We're pleased to have you.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Frankly,
I think from my own experience and my own perspective, this is just the kind of thing that communities need to get stronger, to be communities. We need to connect with each other across whatever it is we do in our particular roles. That's what we need. This is what makes community, is connecting like this. This is great. I've worked in this space for 50, 60 years now, here in Pennsylvania, in the United States, across the world, Australia, Ireland, other places internationally. And the work has always been about building community, bringing I retired recently as a professor from Penn State after 47, 48 years working in this space, doing research and teaching and engagement work, and that was my real joy, was the engagement work that I did with communities and with people. And all of my research and all of my teaching and all of my community connection work was integrated together. That's just the way I work. You got to connect with people. That's the key thing.
You are the community people whisperer, the guru, the Yoda in my life, and so I'm so honored that you're on our show of Connection and Connect Happy Valley. You know, as a fanboy of your work and of you, I have so many questions. You know, so when you say this space, can you expand upon when you say this space of community? Dive into that a little more. Yeah. Your whole careers have been about this space.
Well, great. That's a great question, Greg, from my point of view. And the answer that I have, the principles that I've worked from, the answer that I have to that question that's guided me over all the decades, all the things that I've done in all the various contexts, is that community is about people. It's about relationships. It's about connecting. It's not some geographic entity. It's not some particular group of people. It's about all people in place. And an important concept here, I think, is place. You know, what do we mean by place? And place is not bound geographically or by government boundary lines or whatever. It's about people's relationships with each other.
And so, since there's no boundaries to place, you've chosen to live, work, and play in Happy Valley. And so define the place that is what we call Happy Valley, this Penn State region, this community of 700,000 alums, 50,000 students who have two parents on average, 100,000 parents. There's 160,000 of us who live in the geographical boundaries called Center County. So how would you, as the dean of community in my life, the PhD of studying what you just said, how would you describe this place from your learned background?
Look, by the way, Greg, what I know and what I've learned is only one person's knowing and learning. Everybody, in my view, is an expert. Everybody has perspective. Everybody has something to bring to the table. And part of being a community, part of being a place that people want to be, is affording opportunity for everybody's voice to be heard. And that's not just about hearing the voice. That's about demonstrating respect for everyone's expertise, the gifts they bring, their dignity, if you will, as human beings. That's a critical thing. Look, we've lived here since 1976 in this region. Raised our children here. Retired here now. There's some great things about this area. There are some other things that we ought to talk about that maybe need to be strengthened, and maybe we can talk later about strong towns. That's the strong town idea. But first of all, there's the aesthetics of this place, the natural environment. It's huge. It's a place people want to be. It's a major asset. There's a strong economy that attracts people. There's job opportunities. It could be stronger, but it's a strong economy, and that's an attraction. We have the university. It's a great asset. We have a growing medical system and systems here. Those are all assets. We have an interesting and vibrant downtown that is in the process of changing and shifting. That's in State College. But we also have wonderful communities out around State College in the region. I think not just about State College, but I think about the region. I think about, Snowshoe and Millheim and all the places around us. That's all, to me, part of the entity here. And it's part of something to be part of. It's an attraction. The other thing I think that we have is we have people who are committed to building relationships. Where there's a lot of groups, and you guys know this, there's a lot of groups around this region that get together and have conversations and talk about local issues and get to know one another, and they bring their different experiences together. We have a rich fabric of that, right? And if you think, another way to think about place and community is think about it as fabric, and think about the way we engage each other and the relationships we're building. Think about that as weaving that fabric, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of that here, and that makes this area an attractive place. Can we do a better job of that? Can we do more of that? Yes. Okay. But there's a lot of that here.
And why do you think there's so much of it here? Is that there are a lot of these groups that care so much about Happy Valley, about Penn State, and they do gather, and they gather in third places, which you've taught me the meaning and the benefit of third places, and they meet, and they care, and they talk, and they discuss. Do you think we have a higher density of that here in our community than other towns?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. My experience is that we probably do have a higher density, but there's a lot of this that goes on in other places too. Places I've been, in Australia, for example, the notion of a third place, which is a place that folks can come together, like Pine Grove Hall. Mm-hmm. Folks can come together and bring whoever they are and what their views are, and they can sit and have a meal and have a drink and connect and get together and talk about issues. That's the power of the third place idea. We have a lot of that here. Other places have a lot of it too, okay? And I've seen some situations in other states where communities have actually made a conscious effort from a planning and development point of view to establish third places, okay? Driven by organic interest on the part of community members. So, I think we do have a lot of that here. We have people who are interested in having conversations, okay, and learning. A question I always have about that is who's at the table, and are we hearing everybody who we might hear? And I think we need to be realistic about that and think about that. How can we be even more welcoming and open to people that we maybe don't on a day-to-day basis or on a regular basis engage with. And I think there's huge value in that, because I believe at the intersection of differing points of views and experience, that's where creativity, learning and creativity is. And if we're just talking to ourselves, we're just talking to ourselves. We don't have new ideas coming out.
And you've chosen, and as retired, long career at Penn State, interim dean of, can you talk a little bit about your academic background a little bit that makes you a strong towns community person? You have a company that goes around the world helping build stronger communities. And so, what got you into this subject matter kind of expertise or an analyzer?
Well, the main driving force for me is that I believe in people, and I believe in people, our individual and our collective capacity to do things. And I've always tried in the course of my work, whether it's been as a professor or as an administrator at the university, or in my work with community groups, we've always been devoted to not doing things or talking to people and doing things, showing them that we can do things, but rather helping to create the capacity and the cultural context for people to do things themselves. All right, and that's been the driver. And at the heart of it, it's about people, right? Listen, business is about people at the end of the day. Yes, it's about profitability. Yes, it's about being efficient and cost effective. Yes, but at the end of the day, it's about people that drives it. That's been my driver, is people, concern for people, and I do my very best to reflect the idea that everybody, as I said earlier, has gifts and has something to offer, and to create context for that to happen.
And so in your consulting practice, at the heart of it is people. You go into Australia, you go into any town USA, and you're hired to execute exactly what you've eloquently said, is getting the people to work together. And I know your slogan is, after you leave, they'll never know you were there.
Right.
Can you expand upon that as it relates to bringing that all home for us?
Well, Greg, you mentioned the little business we have. Two of my colleagues and I are founding partners of a little business we call Creative Insight Community Development. And we work domestically, but also globally. And our approach, our mission is to work with and for people on issues that are important to them, real issues, in real time, that are going to strengthen and improve the quality of life in their communities, that they think will do that. Okay?
Not what you think, it's
Not
what they
we think. It's not our project. It's the community that we're concerned about, and the people of the community. And we probe and question and raise issues and provide context from our experience across the world, and what we think we know, as having worked in this space for a long time, to provoke and support people in finding their path forward, not our path forward, if that makes sense.
And that's completely opposite of most consultants that
It's
come.
totally
opposite.
Totally opposite. We always say, we don't have a bunch of PowerPoint presentations. Right? We're not going to do that. We're not going to give you the recipe, 1, 2, 3. This is what your planning ought to look like, or whatever. This is what your action strategy ought to look like. What we bring is questions and dialogue to discover, for people to discover and groups to discover those things. right?
And
That's what we do.
And at every problem, and you've gone around the world and you've solved the wicked problems is kind of your terminologies. And everything I've read that you've published is that it's always solved through people.
Right.
Not necessarily a recipe or a template or a PowerPoint or words like build a strong, smart growth community. You say it's, how do you sum that up for our audience?
Well, gosh, let me a real quick example, okay? Maybe that can sum it up. In Australia, I've worked extensively on what the Australians call established invasive species. These are animals, vertebrate animals in particular, but also I've worked with plants and weeds as well that have been brought to Australia that are not natural to that ecosystem, which is a very unique ecosystem, and there's no predators. There's nothing to deal with those animals, and the rabbits, for example, they do in Australia. It's like $250 million a year, something like that, and just agricultural crop damage, let alone the environmental damage they do to native species, native vegetative species, and the technicians, the scientists, the government people, they know all about how to fumigate rabbit warrens and rip them and poison and kill the rabbits and whatever. But it never works. Well, we've come to that dialogue or that issue with the idea that, folks, yeah, we got a rabbit problem, but what we really have is a people problem. We've got to coordinate and work together collaboratively at a large scale, at a landscape scale, if we're going to deal with these issues. Now, are you ever going to knock down rabbits? No, not at this point. There's too many rabbits. They reproduce too quickly. But you can manage the rabbits, and that's that's a people problem that has to occur across space, not on your property, Chris, or not on your property, or not on my property. It's got to be together, and we've got to learn to work together and learn from each other if we're going to deal with the rabbits. So that's an example. Same for things like wild pigs and tree disease and banana disease in Queensland and other situations like that. It's got to be people working together across space and time to really have an impact. And I would argue, I'm sorry, Chris.
Well, I was just going to say it's about recognizing and channeling the character of a community, like
Absolutely.
the spotted lantern fly in southeast Pennsylvania.
Exactly.
No sweat. You get a bunch of Philadelphians and you say you see one of these things, you stomp on it, no problem, baby. That whole community will line up to get up behind inflicting violence on outside intruders. So that's what it's all about. Connect Happy Valley A.M. here at Pine Grove Hall. We're talking with Ted Alter, who has been already, I think, demonstrating the depth and breadth of experience and wisdom gleaned from it around the topic of building communities, recognizing the building blocks of what really connects a people to their place, and how do you make that stronger. Recently retired from the Penn State faculty, where you, as you said at the top of the show, spent many decades as a faculty member and administrator. Before we circle back, Ted, to interrogate questions about our own community here in Happy Valley and how what you've learned and taught and the approach that you've developed with your consulting business, which, as you just said, is, I think, distinct from what most people expect when they think of a stereotypical consultant. I'm just wondering if you can fill in a little bit more background about the process by which you came to this. What compelled you to pursue this as a subject of interest, and then how did that journey, that professional journey, take you from that spark of interest to where you are now?
Well, Chris, thanks. Okay, thanks for that. That's more than a professional journey. That's a personal journey that goes way, way back. And I don't mean for this to sound trite, okay? But I grew up on a greenhouse operation and a truck farm, a vegetable farm in Northwest Ohio. And we did everything. We grew everything, and we sold everything at our place. Direct marketing. This is, post-World War II. This is 70 years ago or whatever. The direct marketing, that's what we did. It's not a new phenomenon for me. And
Was that a family
that was a
farm?
family operation. Exactly. Yes, thank you. And I learned, I didn't know I was learning it, but I was learning it, watching my mother and father run that business. And fundamentally, Dad was a educated, highly educated master grower, if you will, but he was about people. He was about people. People came from all over the city to buy our stuff, see him, buy our plants, our poinsettias, right? And I watched him interact. School kids, buses of school kids would show up. It was all show up and follow him around the greenhouses. He's watering plants, right? And he's talking to them, and he's asking them questions. He's asking them questions, and in the course of responding to those questions that they asked, respect for what they want to know, he's responding and sharing, and that's about people, so I saw that, and he was also engaged in the community as well, with various community groups, not-for-profits, and that sort of thing, and we were very successful. The greenhouse still stands today.
Wow.
Okay, the truck farm is gone. Expensive houses on it, right? but excuse me, but he understood, and my mom understood, that the business was fundamentally about people. So I learned that. And unfortunately, I had my education beyond that. My experience beyond that, I served in the military. And I served at high level in the military, in the 3rd Infantry Division, I'd probably say. And sorry for you Marines and Navy guys out there, but, and Air Force guys, but we're all comrades, by the way. But I served as the commanding general, and I learned that at that level of a large, complex organization, this is Cold War. I learned that it's about that work was about people. Mm-hmm. I mean, we had tactical and strategic military things we needed to do, but it was about people. All right. The general, the commanding general of the 3rd Infantry Division, would show up at the headquarters company flag football games and running along the sideline, cheering the headquarters company guys on. Right? Did he have time to do that? Well, you could argue no. But he took time because he was connecting with people. Mm-hmm. Okay, and it wasn't just the guys on the field. It was about the people who were there watching, who saw him doing that. So he was impacting them as well, and that connoted a cultural message about the importance of people. And I was fortunate enough to also then post-military study with people at Michigan State University who, for my graduate education, who understood this and demonstrated the same, as I look back on it, the same kind of behavior. And coming here to Penn State, 1976, I was in a position that required me to integrate research, teaching, and community engagement work. And I worked all across this state. At one point, it's out of date now, I could have given you a listing of the best diners in every county in Pennsylvania. Okay. So I knew that. I knew people.
We can still publish that guidebook.
So, and in working in those communities, I met so many folks that were experts. Different kind of knowledge, local, practical knowledge, if you will, that they were experts. And bringing that knowledge. I learned that it was important to create a context for people to bring that knowledge together into the fore, all right? And for them to find ways to deal with the issues they were dealing with. Because then they own the solutions, right? They own their community in that respect, not some guy from the outside coming in and suggesting what to do. I was just there to create a context, to be a vehicle, to be a lightning rod for discussion. And you know, I learned, don't come with a presentation. You know, you come with some ideas of what might be pertinent, but that really brought home for me the importance of people. Okay, it's same administratively work within the university, the various levels of the university I worked at. You know, staff, faculty, stakeholders, people want to feel like they're being respected and have a voice, and they have ideas. Just because you listen and talk with people doesn't mean you have to do what they're suggesting per se, but there might just be a nugget in there, and there always is, I can guarantee you, in what they have to say. And so I don't know, Chris. I don't know if that answers that. It's kind of a long-winded thing.
I know it was great.
But,
it was
but
great.
It's not just professional experience. It's life experience that sort of, it's the word, rebounded through, drove through professional experience.
Well, what strikes me about the way you answered the question, Ted, is that it seems
Whoa,
like
that's okay.
a lot
That's
of
okay. No
the. So we'll get one of the busboys right
Yeah,
up.
that's good.
It seems that the root of a lot of the insight you have developed over the course of your academic career, which then has translated into professional consulting on, translating analysis and knowledge into action in building communities. It just kind of bubbled up organically from your life experiences and the lessons and observations you took from them. You talk about growing up in a setting where you have a family-run business that has a point-to-point relationship with the community, and seeing your dad interacting with customers of all ages and all interest levels. And what do you learn from that? And then your service in the military, and what lessons did you take away from observing your superior officers and the way they chose to spend their time, the way they interacted with the subordinates under them? And clearly, like, chain of command is essential to the way military operates. And then you take those things and you pair them up with, in-class study, research as you're earning your advanced degrees, and all of it synthesizes together with this kind of general thesis you laid out for us in the first quarter of the hour about what is it that makes a community, what makes a strong community. And it is really, I think, something we talk about on this show all the time, the point of intersection between people and their place. Both are unique, and when they come together, that's when you have something special. That's what makes the magic of Happy Valley. We had Dave Gertis, who I know you know, Dave, spent several years with the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau, really helping plus up the efforts of this community to market itself as a destination for people all over Pennsylvania and throughout the Mid-Atlantic and beyond. And Dave is, this term we come to love here in Connect Happy Valley A.M., a boomeranger. He came, did his studies at Penn State in the 1970s, then went out to the West Coast for a while, and ultimately he was drawn back. In fact, he was invited back to Happy Valley, and he couldn't be happier to be here. And Dave said, there is just a certain spirit to the place. There is a certain feeling to it. I just come out and say it. There is a magic to Happy Valley that you can find in other places around the world, but not too many. And so it's rare and it's precious, and we want to take seriously our role as not just inheritors of it, but as stewards of it for another generation. And so let's now circle back to talking specifically about Happy Valley. And I think maybe a good point of entry would be, you said earlier you wanted to talk about this concept of strong towns. And so let's lay that out, what that means to you, and then we can examine our place through that lens.
Okay, all right. Well, that's good. That's a good question here. Look, from my point of view and my experience, strong towns. The idea of a strong town. The idea is grounded in localism and local action. In my view, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, right? And there's a lot of stuff that, the three of us, individually or collectively, that we can't necessarily influence or impact. And we're bombarded with that.
Quite a bit, actually.
Quite a bit, actually, right. Absolutely. And it can be overwhelming. It can be overwhelming, right? In the economic space, in the political space, in cultural change space, I mean, just name it. But what can we do? Where can we find hope and agency and take action? There are things locally that we can do. We sometimes use the example in our work of the paint the fence idea, right? You come into a town and there's all kinds of problems that people are complaining about and wrestling with, but you come into town, and at the entry of the town there's an old fence there by the sign that says, whatever the town is, there's an old fence there that just needs a paint job and it needs to repair. Okay, why don't we do something about that? How costly is that? It's not costly at all. Let's go out, let's paint the fence. That's a starting point, okay? It's local. It's something we can do, something we can have an impact on. Okay, we paint the fence. People see that. Oh, my God, the fence is painted. What happened? Who's doing that, right? Well, what else can we do that's paint the fence, okay? With the people that are in town. What are the small projects, small things that would make this a better place to be? Mm-hmm. Not only for us, but to attract others, if that's what we want. And let's try to identify those, and let's try to figure out how we might work on those, okay? And make a change in our community. Strong towns, I think, do that. They focus locally, they focus on things that are doable, and as you do more of that, you can actually take on things that maybe are more difficult. Because why? Because people have confidence, they grow to believe that we collectively can do stuff and make a difference. And those strong towns are towns that have, I think, that kind of mentality. And you think about this from a risk point of view. That's pretty low risk, painting the fence, quote, painting the fence, right? It's pretty low risk. And if it doesn't work, okay, what do we learn from that? Maybe we use different wood to repair it, or maybe we use different paint, or maybe, a different group of people come to do it. We can learn from that and change. That's pretty low risk, as opposed to making some big play, some big external play where we lay out a lot of local resources to make it happen, and then 6, 7, 8 years from now, markets change, technology changes, and that big play goes away, and we're left holding the bag at the end, so to speak. There's big backloaded risk in that, right, as opposed to minimal front-loaded risk. So strong towns, I think, are places that see local opportunity, take action to do it, and in taking action to address those issues, find agency and find community in that. And I want to come back to that in a bit before we close here today about back to people and relationships again.
Go ahead into it.
No.
Because I was going to go the strong towns, paint the fence. Have you seen organically, does that come from the people, by the people, or does it come top down from organizations that lead the charge?
Yeah, listen, I think that it comes from both. At least it comes from both. There's the potential, the promise of coming from both. All right? And, look, that's a binary when we think about it that way. We need to think in terms of a collective, a group. We all have responsibility for the place within which we live. It's not your responsibility, it's not your responsibility, it's our responsibility. And that applies for people, not-for-profit groups, for public sector, private sector, right? And that's part of the organizing challenge is across those differences.
And you speak often of Tocqueville and what he found in 1840 when he came over here from France that was uniquely American, USA, democracy. In context of paint defense, what are the opportunities that a town, a community, Happy Valley needs to activate to be more Tocquevillian?
Well, I think, I think one of the things that is helpful is to be intentional about creating spaces for people to come together. The Arts Festival is an example of that. For example, that's been, I don't know, we've been here 50 years, or almost 50 years. 50 years. Yes, what is this? It's 26, 70, 50 years. Arts Festival's been going. I think it started before that.
A little bit before.
Don't remember
yeah,
the history.
Yeah, early 1970s, I
But
believe.
that's a place for people to come together, local people to come together and do stuff, and also people from outside the region to come together. That's a really positive thing. I think that the idea of having fun, creating fun, and gatherings is one aspect of that, Greg, of what can be done. But we need to be a little more intentional about that, all right? So local gatherings where people can come together, and we do that. We do some of that. I'm not saying we don't do that here, but I think that's a very powerful force. Who has responsibility for that? I would say we all have responsibility for that. And let's provoke each other to get involved and do some of that stuff, right? This is a little different context, but it's making me think about a doctoral dissertation that one of the folks I worked with in Australia did, and was involved in this effort. And there was a study focused on Kruger National Wildlife Park in South Africa. Mm-hmm. Okay, and there were 2 units, operational units within that system.
Before you go any further, Ted, I'm going to have to gently scold you to hold the mic just a little bit closer. There you go.
Okay. So we're talking about Kruger National Wildlife Park, a study that was done there by a student of mine. And there were 2 units within Kruger. One was known as a great place to work, and it was highly productive by all the markers. The other unit was known as a difficult environment, and it was not productive in terms of all the organizational markers, and the relationships weren't good. Okay? Well, what did it come down to at the end of the day, the difference? It came down to what this person in the research that she did noted as one unit made time for tea on a regular recurring basis, and the other unit didn't. Making time for tea, people got together on a recurring basis to talk to each other, to learn from each other, to acknowledge each other, and that built respect, it built camaraderie, it built community. Okay, that was the difference. And so, I would say strong towns, great places to live and work, are built on that kind of interpersonal communication that occurs on a regular basis. We need to think about, are we being intentional enough in creating those spaces?
So you got to be a fan of Peter Drucker's quote, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast."
Right. Absolutely.
So the common thread here, and even as a professor, you're very Socratic. You always say you're not the the sage on the stage, you're the guide by the side, and you always would ask questions of your students. You would never tell them what to do, you would ask questions, so is this born on the farm that you've learned from your father? But it's been the hallmark of what you're saying is innovative culture is having tea, is asking the questions.
Right.
And you were part of a team that solved this rabbit thing. How much billions did you save through your work of having tea with connecting people, that it wasn't a rabbit problem, it was a people problem, and you solved or helped solve a wicked problem through metaphorically having tea?
Yeah, well, let me tell you how the rabbit work happened, how it unfolded. We organized a 3-day gathering in Victoria. This was in Victoria, Australia. A 3-day gathering, 3.5-day gathering of community members, government people, wildlife scientists, farmers, all right? And there were 200 or 300 folks participating, all right, in this. And it was let's sit down and talk about and figure out the rabbit problem. Let's map it. Let's map what we know, what we don't know, how we need to go about it, or how could we go about it. That's what we did. We created a space. There were no lectures. There were no PowerPoint presentations. It was a space for dialogue where people came together, and it was a big organizational, 200 or 300 people. This is a real logistical problem. But once folks got over the initial shock of doing something differently, they just embraced it. Oh, our voice matters. Oh, we can tell our story. Oh, and I can learn from your story. Right. Okay? And that was the start of the Victorian Rabbit Action Network, which just finished its 10-year, just had its 10-year celebration. And it's a community-run organization. Government sits at the table, universities sit at the table, local people sit at the table. It's governed by local people, not by government. Okay, and there's a leadership group. There's a young people's group. You go out in the field and you learn how to rip rabbit horns. It's part of the program. They've orchestrated all this, and it came from creating this intentional space where people come together and learn together and build relationships. That's the key thing. Build relationships in the context to do that. Geez, Greg, I didn't know you had that kind of problem on your place. That's kind of similar to what I've got. Holy crap. Let's talk about that.
So it was about just, having the patience and discipline to take a deep breath, step back, and create a space where you can get people
That's
connected
right.
to one another. And so,
stand in the gap and don't worry about it. Let people talk. Don't worry about silence.
so that takeaway, I think, is probably an appropriate opening to bring in a question from the audience. For those of you just tuning in, it's Connect Happy Valley A.M. here. We're live at Pine Grove Hall. Check them out at pinegrovehall.com and Pine Grove Mills. See the packed events schedule. Check out the seasonal menu. Book your reservations to come out and support this wonderful, distinctive third place of our community, which is our generous host here on Connect Happy Valley every morning from 9 to 10 a.m. I'm Chris Buchignani. He's Greg Woodman with you every day. Go to connecthappyvalley.com, sign up for the weekly e-letter. And we're talking with Ted Alter, recently retired from the Penn State faculty, but a long, long career of working hands-on outside the classroom in community development, both as a teacher, as an administrator, and as a consultant. And so, Ted, we got a question from the audience here, and we welcome anybody to chime in via the live chat. How do we get all ages, which is a really pertinent question here in a college town, to engage in this kind of community dialogue you're describing?
That is a great question. It's in my experience, a central question. I mentioned with the Victorian Rabbit Action Network, I mentioned there was a youth part of that, right? And the idea with this is this intergenerational connection. It's important for all parties. All right. young folks can learn something from listening to the stories and the experience of folks that have been around a while. Folks that have been around a while can learn a lot from listening to the new ideas and the perspectives of younger folks. All right, I can tell you many stories about that. I won't go on and bore you with that, but it's my experience that is just dramatically powerful, bringing generations together. One of the human behavioral dynamics about this that's critical is a couple things. First of all, it's not necessarily normal or typical. Okay, so there's some maybe lack of understanding or not the depth of understanding, let's put it that way, on either party that it's necessary to really be effective. Let me give you an example. I'm doing some work with veterinarians in Australia now, and New South Wales, and particularly New South Wales, Australia, the eastern part of the country, southeastern part of the country, and it's a mentoring program. And so the older folks, the district veterinarians in Australia, they cover a lot of territory, a lot of space. They got major problems. There's not enough of them, and usually large animal problems they're dealing with. And farmers, their livelihood is dependent on dealing with solving these problems, right? And so the question is, we were asked, what can the younger folks, younger vets, learn from the older vets, that have been in this work for a while, about how to, not just the technical issues, but how to actually survive and prosper. Well, one of the first things we said to them is that, so this is a mentoring program, right? We said to the older vets, the best mentor is also a mentee. What's that mean? Well, that means that you've got all this experience, but if you're going to have a dramatic effect, be most effective in dealing with people and have a dramatic impact, you've got to listen. And you've got to learn from the folks, the younger folks that you're dealing with and talking to. This is not a talking to issue. This is a talking with issue. And there's that opportunity for intergenerational learning. And younger folks aren't necessarily used to being able to engage that way either. Okay? Yeah. All right? So you see the dynamic on both sides? We've got to find a way to get into that, to get across that. And I think one way of doing that is to be intentional about bringing younger vets, and this is what we've done, younger vets and older vets, and you can apply this to any context, younger vets and older vets together to talk about what would a mentoring program look like. Don't define it ahead of time. Talk with them about what it might look like. Make sense?
Well, it makes sense. And a question about, you've laid out a clear, at least in my head, a model, a system of how communities can become strong. And yet, as you travel and are hired to help a community come stronger, isn't there a clear recipe here that has to do with more listening than talking? And how do you wrestle with the fact that you have flipped the script on even the consulting practice you did, and you're going in teaching or attempting to teach something that is polar opposite of what officials have been raised and achieved their position and their ego and vanity of being the leaders, and you're coming in saying, whoa, you have 2 ears, 1 mouth, use the ears.
Right.
And and you're still at it. You could be on a golf course every day, but you're still trying to serve and help people, which is a clear Peter Drucker culture eats strategy for breakfast. And and when a company like Costco comes around or Chick-fil-A, we're all like in amaze, like how'd they do it? You've given us the whole recipe here of innovation, of democracy.
Well, Greg, look, I think you're being awfully generous there.
No, I'm being awfully frustrated.
Look,
It's not being practiced more.
I think at
in
one
leadership.
I think at one high level, if at a higher level of abstraction, I think there's probably a recipe there, and it is about listening. It's about honoring people and other people and honoring their experience, creating context to bring folks together. Okay. But if you've seen one situation, if you've seen one community, you've seen one community. You've seen one situation. And every place is unique. Every situation is unique. At higher levels of abstraction, there's some ways to approach things, I think. But we've got to honor the uniqueness of every situation, every place, and not try to define it ourselves, but define it together as members of the community, if that makes sense. And I think our job with respect to each other, what do we owe each other, is to help each other create that space in our community. I think that's what we need. That's why I think one of the reasons why I think what you guys are doing here is so important. You and I would say you're helping to try to create. Help all of us create a space for this community prospering. I want to say one thing here. I know we're getting down on time. Two things. First of all, this is not easy because there's always conflict. We are interdependent as human beings. We are interdependent with the world around us, including the environment, and people have differing views and differing perspectives, and there's conflict. And I don't view conflict as problematic. It can be, but I view it as a source of insight, a source of learning, a source of innovation. It's difficult to stand in the fire of that conflict. But so this is not easy, doing this, okay? Doing this work for any of us. The other point I wanted to make is that has to do with sustainability. We talk a lot about sustainability, okay? You got that word in context of environment, in context of social issues, economic issues. My view, my argument, my perspective is that our sustainability is found in the context of our human relationships. It's found in the context of people. We got people together on the Round Rabbits, and they're working together, okay? 10 years, still going. But you know what? In those communities that are involved, those people, they know each other now, okay? They can deal with the healthcare problem, or they can deal with, remote education for their children. There's this knock-on effect of from learning to work together on an issue to other issues. That's our sustainability, I argue, is in our relationships with each other and our ability to act together. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes sense. And I know you have a group of people that you meet with on Zoom every morning. You guys have an interdependent friendship network, and we had a guest last week on the blue-white zone, on the blue zones of human flourishing, and the studying the life expectancy, and it comes down to human relationships and friendships and purpose. And I'm so marvel when you told me that you guys have been meeting for how many years, and how many of you jump on a phone call every morning, 6 days a week. Can you speak a little bit about that in context of your life's teaching and learning?
Well, look, I think that there's a group that gets together on a regular basis, in person and online, virtually, as many people as can come on every day. And it's kind of the same larger group, but people participate as they can. But it's about to discuss issues, to share experiences, to share ideas. And that's that's an example of the kind of connectivity that can make a difference in a community. And I think in this community, there's a lot of that going on. Maybe it looks different from group to group, but there's a lot of that goes on, and that's one of the positive things here. All right.
And I've been kind of, this word belonging, how important to this emotional aspect and our biological need to belong to a group, to belong interdependently to a place, a region, a book club, you know, in your work of listening and culture eat strategy for breakfast and interdependence, what's this word belonging that I've been preoccupied with probably my whole career?
Well, look, to my mind, to my experience, belonging is about the nature of human relationships. All right, and if I'm not involved, and we all can't be involved in everything, obviously, but let's say in a group context, if the dialogue is such, maybe it's not even dialogue. If I don't have an opportunity to participate, or if my perspectives and ideas are discounted or overridden by somebody else's voice, you know, your sense of belonging is not there, right? You know, it's easy, and people aren't necessarily being mean-spirited, but it's easy to exclude people by virtue of the way we interact with each other. All right. It's also easy, if we think about it, to include people, and that's about belonging. You know, inclusion, exclusion, belonging, dialogue, relationships. It's all interconnected.
I have to ask one more question. I know we're running out of time. You gave me a book about the economics of love versus fear.
Huh.
Speak to that definitive work that an economist came up with on the economics of love versus the economics of fear. Just sum it up in a minute of what that whole thesis was about.
Well, yeah, that's great. So, arguably, at an abstract level, but also at an operational level, human relationships, our connectivity with other people in community, in society, in our groups, is about, quote, love. It's about respect. Respecting other people as human beings, their dignity, the gifts that they have to bring. Strong communities have strong relationship networks that are grounded in, arguably, the idea of love. And you know, if that's how we feel, how do we treat each other? How do we share our resources within community to make everybody's life better the best we can, right? We can go on and on about this. There's another side to it, but that's the idea. Relationships and sustainability is about this idea of love, grounded in human relationships.
Wonderful. I know you got to wrap it up here,
Yeah.
Chris, but I appreciate your insights, Ted.
Sure, we appreciate you spending this time here with us, Ted, and I think everything you've laid out over the last hour just illustrates one of the points I always love to drive home about this community. If you come here with a curious mind, you will never run out of interesting people to capture your attention. Just the variety of folks who have such a, as I said, breadth and depth of life experience and expertise and wisdom on topics means that we are really blessed with an abundance of the raw material you're describing as essential to building a strong community, which is people who are going to invest in a place and bring something to the table. So we're very fortunate in that way, and we appreciate you spending some time here with us, Ted. It won't be the last time we have it on the show, I hope, unless, you know, the experience of sitting up here on a stage with me and Greg scared you off.
No, I can deal with you guys. I appreciate.
That's good to hear.
I appreciate being here.
It's an exclusive club who can make that claim. And we appreciate all of you out there in the audience helping us get this thing off the ground. As Ted said, this is our contribution to try and to build and sustain and carry forward the spirit of this place, the special community we call Happy Valley. And we do it 9 to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday right here on Connect Happy Valley A.M. And are so glad to do it live from Pine Grove Hall. Check them out at pinegrovehall.com. If you come have your first experience here, I promise it won't be your last. And go to Connect Happy Valley A.M. to sign up for one of the best weekly e-letters out there. I know there's a lot, but it does a good job of cutting through the noise and starting off every day with a curated list of all the best events, places to go, and people to see here in our little slice of paradise, Happy Valley. So until we talk to you tomorrow morning, have a great day and enjoy Happy Valley, folks.
Ted, amazing.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you,
Amazing.
Ted. Thanks so much.
Amazing.
All right.
Oh, that was it all right. It's the blueprint.